Today we're going to be looking at Manic Panic Professional in the color Love Power Purple. So my swatches are numbered 1 through 12. I do just want to say that is not synonymous with hair levels. I do different video clips and pictures and such throughout the video, so the numbers just help us keep track of each swatch. Also, I want to say that my swatches are not virgin hair, so they've been chemically colored, treated, or bleached at some point in their existences. So to start, I will take the color directly from the container and I will apply it to the top of each swatch. Then I will dilute the dye and I will put it at the bottom of each swatch. Also, it does suggest to do this on wet hair, so I will be wetting the hair. And I know this is called professional, but in case you were wondering, you don't need to be an actual professional to buy this. You don't need a license or anything. From what I was reading on the website, it sounds to me like the formula is supposed to just better match salon formulas, and it has a very gel-like texture. Also, please keep in mind, everyone's hair is different, which means everyone's hair will take color differently. Plus, different screens and monitors can make colors look different, so please just use my video as a reference for how this could possibly turn out for you. For the diluted section, we're going to do a 4:1 ratio. So that's going to be 1 part of the dye to 4 parts diluter. I don't know if technically you're supposed to mix this formula with conditioner, which is what I use to dilute, but I am doing that. And I did do that on my last professional video and it turned out just fine. So I think it's okay. But because this formula is a little bit more unique, I wasn't sure. And if you're wondering what diluter is, it's essentially something that lightens the color of a semi-permanent dye. To keep it consistent between all of my videos, like I said, I'm just using a plain white conditioner as my diluter. So because this is a slightly different formula compared to most of the other semi-permanents I'm gonna do the suggested amount of time, which is 30 minutes. So I will rinse these out after 30 minutes. I will let them dry, and when they are dry, I'll meet you back here and we can do some comparisons. So my background noise is a little bit noisy again, like last week. Somebody is mowing the lawn, so if you can hear that, I apologize. I always like to remind you guys, again, my swatches are not virgin hair, so if you have virgin hair and you try this, it may turn out differently, because virgin hair tends to be less porous, which means it can struggle to take and hold on to semi-permanent color. It does seem, though, that this professional version of the Manic Panic is quite pigmented, so something like this would probably get you a better result than others, especially like a pastel. Overall, I would say this is a nice, warm, undertoned purple, but it's not incredibly warm, like it doesn't bridge on the pink side of a purple necessarily. It still looks quite purple. So one was originally green. The green undertone really smoked out the purple. So if you look at number 11, it's a lot more vibrant in comparison to the number 1, but you do still see a purpley hue. The diluted section, on the other hand, I see a little bit of the green coming through, so if you did ever try this method that I did, I'd probably not dilute it as much. The ends usually are more porous, and it did take the purple a little bit better than the mid part of the hair shaft, but overall the part that does look purple is a little bit lighter than the direct dye portion, which makes sense. 2 was the gray swatch. I'm pleasantly surprised. Oftentimes the gray undertone will also kind of smoke out the color in the end result, but this time it stayed pretty vibrant. It is pretty comparable to number 11. It probably is a little bit more cool tone and a little bit more dusty than 11, but it did retain a lot of the saturation. And even on the diluted section for number 2, you see a lot of that warmth still. So even though it is a touch cooler, it really is like a drop cooler than 11 turned out. I'm going to group 3 in with 6 and 7. Overall, they all took on the direct dye portion, but because the hair underneath is a little bit darker, it does have a slightly more natural quality, but the purple really took. So it does still look majority purple. The 6, 7, and 3 retained just a bit of that natural look underneath, with number 3 probably being the most warm undertone out of the 3. 7 would be kind of in between 6 and 3, and then 6 looks a little bit more cool tone. I'm assuming because of the shade of brown that it was beforehand, it just looks a lot darker. And I see more variation between the swatches on the diluted sections. The diluted section for number 3 really held that red as well. So when I say it looks like a purpley red, I truly see strands that still have that really warm red, but overall looks more purple than it did before. 4 was the black swatch. I don't actually see a difference on that one. 5 was the dark brown. It's very hard to say if I actually see a difference. I swear I see a slight, very tiny hint of purple on the direct portion for number 5, but it is so hard to tell. It does look a lot like how it did before, which again is just like a dark brown, maybe a slight purpley undertone shift, but still looking brown. So since we already talked about the direct dye portion for 6 and 7, I'll just talk about the diluted sections. The 6 diluted, again, held some of that natural color, so it does look like a purpley brown, almost kind of just changing the undertone of the brown, but it's a little bit more pigmented, so I see more purple than I see brown. Sometimes when I'm doing these descriptions, I'm like, does this even make sense? But it's just how my brain interprets it, I guess. So if your hair is like 6 before I dyed it, and you just want your hair to stay close to natural with a hint of purple, diluting this would give a probably really nice result, because that's kind of how it looks on my swatch anyways. You could probably dilute it even less if you wanted an even more natural look. And then 7's diluted section, kind of the same vibe, but because the hair was lighter, I see a little bit more of the purple coming through. I did forget to mention, kind of the same with number 1 again, how the ends took it a little bit better because they're a little bit more porous. That did happen on 6 and 7 as well. So like I always say, doesn't hurt to do a strand test for these, especially if you are diluting it and you're not sure how it'll turn out on your hair. Overall, though, I do see some of that natural color coming through on 7, whereas with 8, that's where we really stop seeing the natural tone coming through for the diluted section. Now, I wouldn't say it necessarily looks like a super saturated bright purple on 8 diluted section, but it took to the hair pretty well, so all of the strands have a bit of that purple. As for the direct dye, it also took really well. Basically, from 7 to 11, it just gets lighter and lighter and lighter until you get to number 11. It's still like a medium to dark toned purple. I would say it actually does cool down a tiny bit as the strands get lighter as well. So on 8, it is a little bit warmer. And that pattern again just continues until we get to 11. I would say 11 looks the most saturated. And the best way I can describe that is it's kind of shining a little bit better over the 11 than it does like with the 10 and the 9. And I think it's the color of the hair before dyeing that plays a role with that. From 10 down, like 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, those just have a slightly softer quality than the 11. And then 12 was our tone swatch. Oftentimes 12 kind of falls between 11 and 2, and I would agree with that today. So 2, like I said, looks tiny bit cooler than the 11, and 12 definitely looks a little bit warmer than 2, but it has a bit of that dustiness, that tiny bit of dustiness we got from 2, I do see on 12. I don't know if I would necessarily say it looks any more cool tone than 11, though. Maybe a touch, but it's more of the dustiness, I think, that's coming through more than anything. So I don't think it would necessarily be required to tone your hair for a color like this unless you really have super yellow hair and you're really worried about the purple being too warm, then maybe. But if your hair is kind of like how 11 is, or usually turns out kind of how 11 was, I don't think you'll need to tone it. So as for comparisons, I thought it would be most logical to compare this first to another Manic Panic color. And I have not done all of the Manic Panic colors, but I do have a nice medium to dark warm purple that I would love to compare. So we're going to look at Manic Panic in the color Purple Haze. This is comparable to number 9, 10, 11, and this is comparable to number 12. Okay, so this is very interesting to me because I have a filming light, as you can imagine. It's kind of a diffused ring light, basically. And in this lighting, there's actually a pretty big difference between the two. But when I was looking for comparisons, these two actually didn't look that far off from each other. In the regular house lighting, the Purple Haze just looked a little bit more dusty, maybe a little less saturated, I guess. Under this lighting, Purple Haze looks much darker and a little bit more dusty, like I was saying, but also a little bit more warm in undertone as well. I think it's probably easiest to tell undertone difference on the 11 diluted swatches. Purple Haze just looks a tiny bit more pinky in comparison to the Love Purple Power, but on all of the swatches, it definitely looks darker on the direct part. So this color is probably pretty pigmented, so it also would work well if you have hair that's a little bit more stubborn. And I will link the video down below if you want to see what it looks like on all of the swatches in case you are curious about doing it on slightly darker hair. So for my next comparison, I was between two different ones. I ended up deciding to go with Lunar Tides in the color Plum. So this is comparable to number 9, 10, 11, okay, and 12. I would say this is probably my most similar comparison, like of all the purples I have. The Lunar Tides Plum is probably the closest. It's a little hard to see on the 11 because my swatch is being a little bit stubborn. Undertone is pretty close. I might actually say the Lunar Tides is a touch, like barely, just a little bit warmer. But it's truly hard to tell on any swatch except for the number 11. Otherwise, they look pretty similar. The Lunar Tides might be a slight bit more saturated because if you look at how it turned out on the diluted sections, the Love Power Purple just looks a little bit dustier in comparison. So overall, it's another nice, good pigmented purple that could work if you have slightly more stubborn hair. The other comparison I was considering was Arctic Fox in the color Purple AF. That one was a little bit more cool in undertone. It's not a super cool purple, but it was a little bit more cool. I felt like the Plum matched a little bit better. And again, I will link the Plum video down below, and I actually do compare Purple AF to the Plum, so you can kind of see what that looks like, as well as the Manic Panic Purple Haze. Now I'd like to look at the before and after clips. And anything past this point in the video will all be done in natural lighting. I hope my video helped. If you have a request, I do have a link below to a Google form you can fill out. Just remember, I only do brands that do not test on animals. Thank you so very much to my patrons, and thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in my next video.